name is Monkiki, and this is my informative speech on bikes. So, how many of you guys ride bikes? They can be a lot of fun, but bikes are also quite interesting too. I bet many of you have either owned or ridden a bike, but what did you really know about it? You may not be a professional rider, but bikes are used daily for cruising, to comfort, to commuting. So, it might be something you want to know about. So, where do bikes come from? Start at the beginning. Bikes come from typically overseas from a factory. So, namely, they will come from Taiwan or China, and they'll be from a machined factory, not a lot of handmade bikes unless they're the higher end ones. Um, so, they'll be machined and they'll be making the frames and a lot of the componentry, the parts that go onto the bike itself. So, they don't completely make it, they just kind of get it all set up. Then it's boxed and put into containers because bikes are commercially shipped overseas for the most part. So they go overseas, come into a port, and wait a while because of COVID. After that, the bikes would come into shore, get dispersed to local shops, and that's where a shop like mine would come in. So when the bike comes in, we unload them off about pallets that are three bikes high, and then we take them in, inventory them, and get to building. So when we're building a bike, what we're doing is we're pulling everything out of the box and kind of just attaching everything to the frame, making sure that it's all put together. So we start with taking the frame out, attaching the seat post and the seat, and then we will focus on getting the pedals in and any bells and whistles like fenders or reflectors that could come with it because they can be harder to put on later on. Um, Next, we would be putting on the wheels or the headset. The wheels, you just want to make sure you get them on straight for the most part because they can also have a disc brake or on the back wheel, they have the rear cassette on them. So you want to make sure that they're in line for the brakes and the chain. That way everything functions smoothly later. And then the headset holds your handlebars. So that goes into the front top tube and that is tightened down, but you want to be careful about tightening that because if you go too tight, it starts to make resistance and it's hard to turn your handlebars. So that's kind of the basics of building a bike, or at least the more simple one. So once that bike is built, it moves out to the floor, and from there, that's where somebody like you would be buying it. So when you're buying a bike, what should you look for? I prefer to get people looking into what style of bike they want first, cruiser, mountain bike, road bike, whatever. Just get an idea of what you're trying to ride. After that, I'd recommend looking into the model, like how the model is going to seat you, as far as where your weight is on your palms versus your behind, as well as if you wanted something that would be holding you straight back, more like a cruiser, or leaning way forward, more like a road bike. Um, so that would be your model. Next is size. You want to make sure that your frame size is right. Of course, you can fit on it, as well as the wheel size under there, because that can affect how high your frame size sits. Um, Next, you'll be looking into the componentry. For example, how much componentry you have can affect the price. A simple beach cruiser will probably cost more than a simple mountain bike just because there's more componentry on the mountain bike. Secondly, that componentry comes in many different levels. There's somebody always makes something better than the next guy. So that can also improve your bike but raise the price. So those are things to be mindful of, kind of figure out what you want, what you need, and what you're willing to pay for as far as componentry goes. Next is what your frame is made out of. Typically, it's between steel, aluminum, or carbon. Those are the three most popular ones, and it mainly goes by which one is the lightest while still remaining strong. So as a result, steel will tend to be cheaper and carbon will tend to be expensive. So from there, you've got your bike, you figured out your pricing, but what do you do now when you need to fix it? Well, when it comes to minor maintenancing, what you're going to be doing is a lot like what we do in the shop. If you have gearing problems with your shifting, you could adjust your derailleur in the back. It has two tension screws that adjust where that arm goes to keep it lined up. So that could have gotten out of whack and just needs an adjustment there. As well as the brakes, you might just want to check to make sure that your brake pads are in line with the rim, as well as your brake tension is good. You don't need a new cable replaced or anything like that. Your headset isn't too tight, your chain is lubed, it's not in need of degreasing or even just a new chain if it's too rusty. And then there's the big stuff, big damages, you probably need it replaced. You can go into your local bike shop to get any pieces you need, but typically with a job like that, it's going to be more complex and more time consuming. So if either of those doesn't work for you, you might just want to bring it into the shop for them to do for you. But that kind of sums up your own bike maintenance. So in conclusion, bikes may seem complex, but they are simpler than they look, and I hope you've come to understand that. And I also hope that you've learned something and get a better view of the bike world from the beginning to the end.